If you feel like you're doing the right things, but you're not seeing real change in your self-concept, you're probably just treating the symptoms instead of the root cause. It's like putting a plaster on a wound that actually needs stitching up. On the surface, it looks healed, it looks transformed, but in reality, you're not even close to who and where you want to be. Let's get to the core of what's really holding you back. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena, I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support you in bridging the gap between who you currently are or perceive yourself to be and who you desire to be or become. Most approaches to changing your self-concept are very much surface level. I don't think any of this is intentional, but it does take a lot to go to the core, to the root of your psyche, and actually transform it where it all began and where it all originates. So there's often no harm intended in this, but people often mistake what self-concept and identity work is really about. It's not simply like trying on new clothes or changing your wardrobe. It's more like changing your body, what's underneath the clothes. A lot of traditional ways of shifting your self-concept or your identity are based around mindset techniques and modalities in general, be that affirmations, meditations, hypnosis, and imagination, like visualization, imagining yourself to be the person that you want to be already. And these techniques and modalities are useful, they can be very supportive, but they are limited. You can't think yourself into a new state or a new self-concept, and you can't force beliefs. Your imagination is also limited. As humans, we are far too attached to the past. That's a survival instinct. We will go into that more later. But because of that, simply practicing becoming a new version of yourself or imagining yourself to be changed, it doesn't mean you become it. Imagine you are who you want to be can be your motivation, your driver, your catalyst. It's not the process. It can be fun to experiment with the feeling of what it may be like, but it's not the path to sustained transformation. And you can't affirm your way into a new identity, you need to become it. So because of that, prioritizing mindset shifts and techniques is well-meaning, but it only scratches the surface of your potential of who you can become, of the transformation that you can undergo. The flip side of a surface-level approach to self-concept work requires depth, and it requires acknowledgement of your entire experience. So a lot of people essentially just treat the symptoms, the things that are visible on the surface, which can give a sense of alleviation, it can give a sense of progress, sometimes the illusion of progress, but the root cause is still there. And so the symptoms are going to show up over and over and over again. It is like trying to heal a wound, and instead of healing the wound by cleaning it and looking at the root of it and treating it how it needs to be treated, it's like putting a plaster over it, or even worse, some fancy makeup so it looks healed. Now you've got a healed wound on the surface, but underneath it's probably rotting. And you see this a lot, and I've been through this, where on the surface, my life has improved. This was back when I was very much associated with the manifestation community. I would see all these changes in my reality, but I kept feeling worse and worse and worse. I kept feeling more anxious. I kept feeling worse about myself. It was never enough, never enough. And then you wonder why you're not feeling better, or why you're feeling better, but you're not where you want to be yet. And that's how a lot of people approach self-concept work. They think that the fancy appearance on the outside is what matters, but they never tend to what actually needs tending to deep within. Changing your self-concept is a complete rebirth. It's a complete shift of your identity. And only through a complete rebirth can the changes be actually sustainable. And doing this is hard, and it doesn't happen overnight. It requires an intentional, deliberate process of integration and rewiring. You can't wing this. And when I say it's a complete rebirth or transformation of self, it's not about becoming somebody else, but about becoming more of you. The most expansive, embodied, and confident version of you. The version of you that lives and embodies the potential that is already here for you. And you know this because it aligns with your desires. That's how you know. Now, the reason we need to dive deeper beneath the surface is because your self-concept, your identity has been shaped through programming. Programming that you've received throughout your entire life. This is programming and conditioning that you have no fault in. It's based on your trauma, your life experiences, the environment you were born into and grew up in, the people that have surrounded you. But it's still your responsibility to change this and step into your highest potential. It's about breaking through what's currently holding you back, embracing the shadows in your psyche, working through the root causes of the patterns that you're sometimes barely aware of, and so on. A transformation in your self-concept is not just an identity shift, it's essentially an ego death. And I could speak about this so much more, and I think we need a separate video about ego deaths. Let me know in the comments if you want to see it. But often when people speak about an ego death, they make it sound like it's pleasant and expansive and fun. But it's not. An ego death is painful. The death of an identity, of a self-concept, is painful. It comes with grief. It comes with hurt. It comes with confusion. It's the dissolution of everything that you've known about yourself and the world. It feels disorienting. If you've not been through a period like that, you haven't had the shift in your self-concept that you think. It's pretty radical, and no wonder you can't fix it with a plaster. I have a free 2-day event called Metamorphosis, which is all about identity shifting, identity rebirth, the death of the old, and the birth of the new. This goes really deep into the topic of identity shifts and ego deaths, how to release what was, and how to step into what you want to step into. You can find the replay for that linked below. But here's what you really need to do to transform your self-concept in a sustainable and a lasting way. You need to approach it in an emotionally integrated and a somatic way. And that is what I teach in Recreate Yourself, or that's what I coach you through in Recreate Yourself, because it's very in-depth to do it this way, but it's the way that it lasts. We need to look at the past. And as much as it's good and important to focus on the vision that you have, you don't want to get stuck in the past. It is undeniable that the past needs to be dealt with. You can't bypass it or it will catch up with you. For example, if you ever told yourself, today I'm going to believe differently. I'm going to hold on to this new belief that I have formed about myself. Maybe it's the belief that it's easy for you to meet a partner, or maybe it's the belief that you're capable of something that you never thought you'd be capable of. If you try to walk through your day with a completely new belief, you bet your thoughts will catch up with you and often claim the exact opposite. And that is normal because we use the past to dictate the future. It helps us survive. But being in the past, staying in the past, and not integrating or not having integrated the pain from the past, the emotions that you've repressed throughout your life, the shadows in your subconscious, it ultimately keeps you from living a different future. Now, healing, integrating emotions, releasing the past doesn't happen through thinking about it or analyzing it or even just sitting with it. You need to fully process it through the body. It's where you store the past, the beliefs, the pain, the trauma. It's all in the body. It's where the subconscious lives, because you can consciously know or want something to be true, but that doesn't mean that your subconscious accepts it too. So to rewire the subconscious, we need to rewire the nervous system, and we need to include the body. That's why somatics and having a body-based approach to changing your self-concept is really key. And embodiment, by very definition, also happens through the body, right? And as I said in a video a couple of weeks ago, embodiment is not just about practicing something or trying something on. It largely happens automatically through the dismantling, through the integration, dismantling of the old self-concept, integration of different parts of yourself. When I coach my clients in Recreate Yourself, by the time we hit the embodiment stage, things in their consciousness and their habitual state in their self-concept have already begun to change. They often tell me that they feel the shift in their self-concept before we even think about consciously doing something about it, long before we emphasize embodying a different identity. Sometimes it doesn't even become necessary because the shift in their self-concept has happened already. That is the magic of integrating emotions and shadow parts and rewiring the nervous system and reprogramming the subconscious in the way that we do it in Recreate Yourself. It's so intentional and deliberate because changing your self-concept is not a fluffy or overly spiritual process. Of course, there's a spiritual component, But that spirituality needs to be grounded in reality. It needs to be grounded in physicality. Otherwise, it just stays in the spiritual realms. And it can very quickly lead to bypassing or delusional or wishful thinking. Let me know how you feel about this. Do you feel like in some ways or areas you've been treating the symptoms instead of the root cause? Do you find it challenging to get to the root? I would love to know your experience and your thoughts. And I'll see you in next week's video where we're going to talk about how to overcome the need for external validation. I'm going to share a bit about my own story there. I'm really excited for it, so I'll see you then.